Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of Lost Codex Legends. My name is Jesse, and today we are talking about not any ladies of the light or any roguish, sneaky characters. No, today we are talking about one character whose backstory isn't as in-depth as, let's say, other characters, but she is very important. I'm of course talking about Draka of the Frostwolves, mate to Durotan, mother of Thrall, and just an awesome Frostwolf character who unfortunately didn't get a whole lot of screen time in the story of Warcraft from what we've seen. But without further ado, let's talk Draka. Draka had a pretty rough childhood growing up, and while that can be said for many orcs growing up in the harsh wilds of Draenor, Draka's childhood was probably more intense and more rough than other orcish children. Draka was born as a sickly, weak child to Kelkar and Zura of the Frostwolf clan, and having weak children of any kind is considered a stain upon the honor of any clan. And while the Frostwolves were not the most brutal of clans, they did discriminate against Draka and her parents by the order of the Frostwolf chieftain, Garad. Now, Garad chose to exile them to the outskirts of the village, which, although it seems like a dick move, it's definitely not the worst thing that could have happened. We find out later that Blackhand flat out believes that Draka should have been drowned as a child, so there's definitely some more intense and horrible ways that this could have been dealt with. But Garad simply exiles mom and dad and small baby to the exiles of the village, where they hope they'll just forget about them and she'll die off and no one cares. But that's not what happened. Draka doesn't die off, and Draka's story continues. Now, as a teenager, Draka is still weak and sickly. She notes that the other kids, the other teenagers, the other orcs in the village are strong, healthy, fast, able to fight, and she is unable to do any of those things. She's on the outskirts. She's considered this burden to the Frostwolf clan, this sort of outside, not even acknowledged by the majority of the clan. Durotan isn't even sure if she's a Frostwolf when he first sees her, but we'll cover that later on. She visits the elder shaman, Mother Kashur, to ask if there's any way for her to strengthen her body, and Mother Kashur says, yeah, there's definitely a way that this can happen. And that she's been visited by the visions of the ancestors, orcish shaman stuff, and that the one way that she could boost her body and become stronger in every way is through a potion, because alchemy is the solution to everything. Mother Kashur says that she could brew a potion, but the ingredients were not easy to gather, naturally, and the hunt could mean death. Now, Kashur sends Draka on this hunt to obtain the wing feather of a windrock, the big scary birds in Nagrand, the horn of a talbuk, and the fur of Clefthoof. Now, we as players are going, that's the lamest quest ever. But when you're a little, small teenager orc, and you're trying to fight a massive bird that can lift a full-grown orc, when you're trying to find a talbuk that's 9 feet tall, or a Clefthoof that's several thousand pounds, that's terrifying. You try going up to a giraffe and seeing what happens. You try taking the tail hair from a rhino. That's not going to happen. But Draka tries. Now, Draka goes off on her adventure, and although she's never been allowed to join any of the orcish hunts, she's never been allowed to join the Frostwolves to go get meat or leather or supplies, and now she has to learn everything that she's supposed to do on this mission from the world itself. The hunt is a difficult task indeed, but in the end, Draka, while still weak, she learns things. She learns from her task and survives all of this, which is an amazing thing that she should have died, but she didn't. And she's successful in killing the Windrock, and she defeats the Talbuk and Clefthoof, and she gets all the ingredients she needs, and her mission is a success. She's a hero character, so of course she's not going to die, and it's ultimately this progression story. All of this happens in a comic story, by the way. If you were wondering, there's a comic out there that covers Draka's story and her progression on this hunt, learning and becoming stronger in getting these 3 seemingly simple ingredients, but as we know, it's not so simple. She returns to Kashur, who reveals that alchemy isn't the solution to everything, and that there's a truer meaning to Draka's hunt. There was never a potion. The hunt itself had been designed to make her stronger and a more determined Frostwolf, and the best part was, it worked. Now strong and beautiful to her people, the mission that Kashur sent her on has made Draka a better orc, a better person, and she joins a celebration where Durotan and Orgrim first catch eye of her. Now, this is where the Rise of the Horde encounter comes into play, where Durotan first sees her, and when he sees her at the celebration, he's not even sure if she's of the Frostwolves. He hesitates, But then he recalls that she and her parents were cast out, exiled to the far corners of the village by his own dad because she was very sick. And I guess Durotan just assumed she died over the years. He knew of this sick, smaller baby, and he just didn't hear anything from it. So, you assume the worst. But he assumed wrong. She appeared to be much better now, and Durotan actually kind of, had the hots for her. And the celebration, this is pretty much the equivalent of, like, orcish speed dating, or orc Tinder, I guess. And so he says, hey, you want to go hunt some Talbuck? We all know what that means in orcish. And she says, hey, buddy, I'm too young to be anyone's mate. And he's like, whoa, okay, that's cool. I accept that. But this is just going to be a hunt. Like, legit, I'm really hungry. Let's go hunt some Talbuck. And nothing more. And so they go off on their first hunt, and Durotan, in a beautiful attempt to impress the lady, is injured by a wolf. Looking real smooth there, Durotan. But to be fair, Nagran wolves are huge, so you know what? Good thing he didn't die. But the two are able to kill the beast, romantic. That's nice. That's a nice first date. And still impressed with the Durotan, despite him being injured, Draka reveals that she had reached adulthood on that very day. Happy birthday, Draka. And the two kiss, and it marks the beginning of their relationship. From here on out, Draka stands by Durotan through some of the darkest periods in Orcish history. During this time, the Horde is formed, and she displays more disapproval to the situation of the Orcs and the fact that they follow Gul'dan. Obviously, Durotan has problems with the slaughtering of the Draenor and everything going on, and Draka echoes those thoughts in his ears. We're going to cover those in more specific terms when we cover Durotan, but Draka stands by him all these years. She stands by Durotan even when the Orcs accept the blood curse, when Grom drinks the blood. And although they're voicing their opinions to the Horde, or rather to the leadership of the Horde, they ultimately join the warband in the end to save their own clan, to save their people. Now at this point, Durotan and subsequently Draka have made plenty of enemies. They've both spoken out against Blackhand, Gul'dan, the Shadow Council. Durotan knows a lot what's going on from an anonymous source, and but they need to do what's right for their people. Now, before Durotan and Draka leave Draenor for the last time, they do go back to Durotan's mom, Gaia, and reveal to her that Draka is pregnant, and Durotan adds that the baby's name will be Goel. This is how Gaia knows that she has a grandson, that Durotan and Draka had a baby named Goel, which that's where Thrall learns his true name. And after this, Draka and Durotan set off for Azeroth. Later on, once on Azeroth, Draka, Durotan, and the rest of the Frostwolves are actually exiled by Gul'dan in secret. He can't make a public situation about this because they've already spoken out against the Horde. If anything happens, they become martyrs. Everyone's eyes are kind of on it. It's a tense political situation, and Gul'dan says, you're going to leave, and you're going to go far away. You're not going to contact anyone in the Horde, you're not going to meet with anyone in the Horde, and if you return, I promise to kill every man, woman, and child in the Frostwolf clan. So he's very serious about his threat, and he flat out threatens to kill everyone that Durotan and Draka love. And so, although Durotan does not want to see his people continue to follow this monster, he must protect his own people first, and so him, Draka, and the other Frostwolves go off into the far mountains of Alterac Valley to live in the coldest parts of Azeroth, or one of the coldest parts. Later, as they've accepted their fate and moved into the Alterac Mountains, north of the Kingdom of Stormwind, Draka gives birth to Goel, also known as Thrall. If you want to know more about Thrall's early stories, check out the first Lost Codex Legends video we did on Thrall, Part 1, to learn about everything that happens pretty much after the events of Draka's story. After Goel's born, she joins Durotan and their baby Goel in a secret mission to Loch Modan, where they're meeting with Durotan's best friend and second-in-command to Blackhand, Orgrim Doomhammer. During this meeting in Loch Modan, Durotan explains everything that he knows, the secrets of the Shadow Council, Gul'dan, the demonic bargain, and Orgrim decides that it's time to stop the evil warlock, it's time to stop his own war chief Blackhand, everything must end here. Orgrim urges Durotan, Draka, and the baby to go back north until he sends word that it's safe. He commands his loyal guards to escort them away because he knows now that Durotan and Draka are at risk. They did exactly what Gul'dan told them not to. and he fears for them. So he sends his loyal guards with him to escort them back to Alterac Valley. If you watch the Thrall video, you'll know that these guards are not loyal to Orgrim Doomhammer, but rather to the Shadow Council. They overhear the entire conversation with Durotan and Draka and about everything, and they actually decide that they don't need Gul'dan's permission, and that he would want them to take out Durotan, Draka, and their newborn child. And so after a few days of escorting them into the mountains, Orgrim's loyal guards fall upon Draka, Durotan, and their baby. And Draka and Durotan meet a horrible end here. Now, they go out fighting. They go out like orcs. They fight tooth and nail. Draka goes down fighting like an absolute monster. They actually kill one of the attackers, but ultimately these assassins just cut Durotan and Draka of the Frostwolves to bloody, gory pieces. They actually leave the baby alive in the snow, and as Durotan's bleeding out, Draka at this point is already dead. As Durotan's bleeding out, the assassins say they're going to leave the baby alive, so they hope that it's ripped apart by the forest animals. Charming. As we know that hasn't happened, watch the Thrall video, you'll know what happens next. And thus ends the story of Draka. Draka dies in the mountains of Alterac, and her legacy carries on with her son Thrall, and everything that he learns from Drek'thar and Grummash and Orgrim later on, and everything he learns about his parents. There is some more to talk about Draka's story, and that's talking about alternate Draka. I've debated on having a separate episode about this, but I realized that there's not a whole lot to talk about alternate Draka from Draenor in Warlords of Draenor, so we're going to include it very quickly in here, and just the minor roles that she plays in the Warlords of Draenor expansion. The first time we see alternate Draka is in Frostfire Ridge, where she's standing with her mate, Durotan, when they meet the heroes of Vol'jin's Horde. Drek'thar vouches for them after they save Drek'thar in Tanan Jungle. From there, Draka participates in several battles of Frostfire Ridge, including the defense of Wargol when the Thunderlords attack the home of the Frostwolves, and the retaliation attack from the Frostwolves when they attack the Thunderlord city of Gromgar. It's here that she actually suggests to Drek'thar to collapse the pass, which we know happens in the Frostfire finale cinematic. At some point during the Frostfire Ridge storyline, she talks to Thrall, who has no idea who he is. She doesn't know that Thrall is her alternate universe's son. None of that. But she asks him, hey, like, where's your mate? Where's your lady? And he says, oh, she's back home with the newborn kids. And she's kind of surprised. She's like, family needs to stay together in times of war. She should be at your side during times of war. And, you know, a nice throwback to how Draka was always at Durotan's side. That sort of stubbornness that we see, that she's not going anywhere. She's not going to play the role of the housewife. She's not going to play the role of just a sideline character. She is at her mate's side. We even see that in the movie with movie Draka, when Durotan fusses over her and she punches him, and she calls him little names and things like that. She's stubborn, she's fierce, and she's by her mate's side at all time. And she says to Thrall, like, your lady shouldn't be back home. She should be here with you, next to you. This is when family needs to be together. And she kind of calls him out on it. It's a really nice mom-son, but not mom-son moment, and a nice throwback to the original Draka. Draka is present in the Gorgron story alongside the Laughing Skull clan, where her and Kaz the Shrieker fight alongside the hero. She's actually quite untrusting of Kaz, but as it goes on, she learns to eventually accept the slightly unhinged Laughing Skull lady. She's present in Talador and leads several battles against the Iron Horde, and she actually fights in the initial charge in the Siege of Shatrath City. She can be found in the Horde outpost there. She's present during the Siege of Grummashar in Nagrand, and is a witness of the death of Garrosh Hellscream when he fights Thrall in a Mak'gora, alongside Durotan and the others. She's present during Drek'thar's reconnection with the elements in Frostfire, and she actually offers to protect the hero at all costs during the initial invasion of Tanan Jungle during the Fury of Hellfire patch, when the gates of Tanan Jungle are breached and the ships launched from everyone's shipyards. She goes with the hero to scout the site of the Dark Portal, and eventually when Volmar, the Horde outpost, is founded, she's present during that moment. Alternate Draka's story continues and actually gets probably the most interesting after we leave Draenor. So Archimonde is dead, everything's good and dandy. The events after Archimonde's death are a little bit unclear, but Orcish politics are not the same as human politics, right? All the crimes committed by the Iron Horde and the other clans, they dish it out in some sort of way. They come to some sort of conclusion because at some point Grommash and Durotan become allies. And a lot of people are going to say, bad writing. Again, Orcish politics is not the same. And I'm sure Durotan had a few fists to swing, a few fights. I'm sure there was a fight going on. I'm sure Durotan nearly killed Grommash, but in the end, none of that matters because Durotan, Grommash work it out. The Horde, or rather the Orcs, and the Draenei live peacefully, to a degree, alongside each other for multiple years. After we leave, the portal, or the passageway to alternate Draenor closes, and more time passes on that world than on ours. It's only been a couple years, but for them, decades pass. Draka and Durotan have a child, but this time it's not Goel. It's not a baby boy with blue eyes. It's a baby girl with blue eyes, and they name her after Durotan's mom, Gaia. They name her Gaia Ara. At some point, the Draenei on alternate Draenor are visited by the Naru, the Light Mother, they refer to her as, and the fanaticism of the worship of the light becomes very prominent in this new Draenei society. They begin to teach the orcs about the light, and many orcs are willing and accepting about it, but many orcs are not, and the Draenei begin to force it upon them. It becomes a whole issue, a war of fanaticism with the light and everything, and there's definitely orcs who've willingly accepted, but from the gossip text and everything we hear, it's definitely not all open arms and everyone's not happy about it. These light-worshipping Draenei, orcs, and even ogres call themselves the Lightbound, and although only a few years have passed for us, decades of fighting is going on alternate Draenor. At some point, Durotan is killed by the Lightbound, and Draka now leads at the time when the players visit alternate Draenor, some almost 30 years later. Draka leads a garrison in Nagrand against the Lightbound, the Draenei and orcs who serve this Light Mother. And Gaia Ara is actually the second in command to Warchief Hellscream. Grommash is now old, gray-haired, battle-scarred, and the daughter of Durotan and Draka serves next to him. And because Gaia Ara is serving as the second in command to Warchief Hellscream in Gorgron, alternate Draka doesn't get to say goodbye to her daughter when she comes with us back to Azeroth at the end of the questline. Because she's holding the fort, literally, in her garrison in Nagrand, we have no idea how many outposts or how much land these Magar orcs have lost in their war against the Draenei. And so the outpost in Gorgrond and the Nagrand post could be one of the few remaining outposts left, and Draka doesn't get to say goodbye to her kid. Draka's fighting this war, and unfortunately, Gaia Ara is forced to leave Draenor and go to Azeroth. And thus ends the story of alternate Draka, as far as we know. Gaia Ara does say that she truly believes she will see the skies of Draenor once again. It could just be character writing, or there could be plans by Blizzard for us to visit there one day to include characters like Yrel and Grommash if he survived, and more importantly, Draka, whose fate we don't know after they leave alternate Draenor. So we're kind of left a little bit unsatisfied, a little bit wanting more with this alternate Draka, especially since she doesn't get to see her daughter. And it really makes it sad because neither Draka got to really say goodbye to their kid at all. Real Draka was butchered with Thrall in her arms, and he was a baby. And alternate Draka never got to say goodbye to her fully grown badass of a daughter, Gaia Ara, at all. So kind of sucks that both Drakas, hell, even the movie Draka has a sad ending. All these Drakas never get to say goodbye to their kids. I guess the movie Draka, she does get to say goodbye to Thrall. She kisses him and puts him in the river, Moses style. But yeah, poor Draka. Now, as we know from BlizzCon, Draka from the main universe, her story's not quite over. She does die, as we know, from these assassins in Ultrak many years ago, but when she dies, her spirit goes to the Shadowlands, and her spirit actually goes to Maldraxxus, the home of the Necrolord Covenant, where she's going to be one of the main characters in that zone. I'll be honest, when they announced that at BlizzCon, when they announced that the main character, or one of the main characters in Maldraxxus, was Draka, I was very confused. Kael'thas and Revendreth, that makes sense. Uther and Bastion, yep, I'm cool with that. Draka and Maldraxxus, whoa. I'm not against it, but everything we've seen of Maldraxxus does not compute with the whole nature of Draka. I know the Maldraxxus and the Necrolords, they're literally the soldiers in the army of the Shadowlands, and Draka, you know, is a great warrior and very firm and defends what's rights and all that. And I can see that the context in which she fits into Maldraxxus, but the whole plague and Necrolord and undead spooky skeleton abomination grossness of Maldraxxus does not at all mix with Draka of the Frostwolf clan. So I am really excited to see how this is going to work. This is going to be a Draka that we're not going to recognize at all, or maybe it is. We really don't know what to expect from Draka in this storyline, and we'll know more as soon as the alpha and the beta happen, but this is one of those curveballs that you're like, huh? Really? Draka in the Plague land of death? All right, let's go. Let's see what happens. I'm really curious to see if Durotan's there, or where Durotan went. If she has some sort of farewell, or if we get to see her farewell to Durotan, or maybe he's fighting alongside her, but she's the main character. They wanted to give her the focus, so I'm excited to see what happens to Draka. And that's all I have to say about Draka, the Lady of the Frostwolves. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Last Codex Legends. My name is Jesse, and we'll see you for the next episode later this week in the future. Or the past. If we're gonna get all timey, wimey, wibbly wobbly, alternate Draenor stuff, it's too late. I've already gone down that path. It's too late. We're all thinking about it now, and now our heads hurt. Let's just stop the video. Goodbye, we'll see you next time.